Now, welcome. So, full steam ahead to 8:10 Irish time. Ireland against Chicago at Soldier Field. Irish team named, which we'll get to in a moment. I'm sure you've seen it already at this stage. So we have me here in studio. We have Ian Madigan at home with his very nice setup. Ian, you're very welcome.
Thanks a million, Joe.
And over in Chicago, we have Cian Tracey of the Irish Independent. Cian, hello, come in.
Hey Joe, hey Ian, how are things?
Very, very good, yeah. As ever, our rugby coverage with thanks to Energia. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels, at grassroots with the Energia AIL, and as official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht, the Irish men's and women's teams. Their Rugby for All initiative welcomes everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. And to learn more about Energia's exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. So both of you doing rather well. Chicago is very nice, I trust, Cian.
Very nice, Joe. Yeah, it's my second time here. I wasn't here in 2016 for obviously the historic win over the All Blacks, but I was here for the Leicester game, I think it's fair to say, against Italy in 2018 when Jordan Larmour scored a hat-trick. People might remember that. I think it was Tyg Burns' first test start as well, but obviously it doesn't get as many of the highlight reel moments as the All Blacks game. But I know you were here, weren't you, in 2016? It's an amazing city. It's live sport on here every night between the Bulls. We got to see the ice hockey team the other night, the Blackhawks, which was amazing. I'd never been to an ice hockey game, but it was a class sporting experience. The World Series is on at the moment. Unfortunately, the Cubs just fell short in terms of getting into it, but the bars over here are just chock-a-block. Everyone watching the Blue Jays and the Dodgers. So if you're a sports lover, it's a bit of a sports lover's dream city. It's really cool.
Yeah, and just beautiful to walk around as well. I mean, the skyscraper part of the city, downtown, uptown, not sure which, but it's all amazing. Yeah, no, it's great. Ignorance is bliss. I wish I hadn't been there in 16 because it's making this week rather painful. I wouldn't realise what I was missing out on. And then Ian Madigan, a little moment of appreciation for Ian Madigan. So I'd say, well, a year ago, I was like, "Do you want to come and be our pundit?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm going to up my punditry efforts." And he's obviously been a revelation for us, as listeners will know. On Saturday, his debut column for the Irish Independent is out. And then Saturday evening, when you sit down to watch the match on Virgin Media Television, there he is on co-commentary alongside Dave McIntyre, Ian Madigan, having a moment. Well done. Well done. Come on.
Thanks very
Come
much.
on. Yeah. That's not bad.
No, I'm delighted. I must say I'm very nervous now for
It's fine. There's only 1 million people watching. It's cool.
That's why I'm nervous. No, it's great. Like, the commentaries, it's the punditry and the commentary, they're actually quite different. And I find the commentary is probably more exhilarating because you've got to kind of try and call it live, but there's a responsibility there as well that you're in, people's 2-hour window to be entertained and to have an appreciation of the game. So if you are tuning in, I hope you enjoy the game on Saturday and listening to myself and Dave McIntyre.
Well, straight away the Indo Sport crew are behind you, so that's a nice touch, straight away. Listen to him, I like him.
Yeah.
So best of luck with it. We have the team. Jamie Osborne is fullback. Hugo Keenan's obviously injured. So Osborne gets the nod at fullback. And then Tommy O'Brien is in for the injured Mac Hansen. Gary Ringrose is in. And Stuart McCluskey at 33 is in. Weird thing to say about McCluskey, it's his third start in a row. People may not remember Portugal and Georgia all that well. But he was there and he gets the nod over Bundy Aki, who's on the bench. And then Henshaw doesn't make the squad. Obviously, Henshaw and Aki were carrying knocks of some description going over. James Lowe is in alongside them. And then, of course, Jack Crowley is at 10. His form is rewarded. And he has Jemison Gibson Park for company. And then the front row, all very strong. Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, Tyg Furlong. Tyg Furlong's first start for Ireland since the series in South Africa in 2024. We obviously interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and he was kind of cautiously optimistic that he had sorted out some root causes of issues in his body and that the future was bright, where he wasn't so sure maybe a year previous to that. So good to see Furlong start. In the second row then, Joe McCarthy is injured. So James Ryan gets the nod, as does Tyg Byrne. In the second row, Tyg Byrne. Ryan Baird is at 6. Josh van der Fleer is at 7, and Jack Conan is at 8. And then replacements, Ronan Kelleher on the bench. It's funny, all the talk when the squad was announced was Paddy McCarthy. Why is he going as third man? You know, could we not have squeezed a Munster representative on there? Paddy McCarthy will make his debut for Ireland most likely on Saturday. He's on the bench, and Finlay Bealham is there too. Ian Henderson is second row cover. Caelan Doris makes his return after a shoulder injury, picked up against Northampton, so he's on the bench. Craig Casey on the bench. Sam Prendergast on the bench, as is Bundyaki. So that's the team. Ian, overall thoughts. We'll get into specifics. Does that read like a strong-looking team to you?
Yeah, it does. There's a few people that are a big loss. I think Joe McCarthy is a big loss. Just that kind of physical impetus he brings at breakdown, the impact tackles that he brings, bit of a nuisance to play against. I think they've gone with the foreign players at 10 and 12. Crowley, deservedly, in my opinion, is starting at 8.5. And Stu McCluskey's been very good for Ulster. It's a funny one when people are saying, oh, you know, is Robbie getting too old? You know, Stu McCluskey, I think, is actually a year older than him. But the difference with the two guys is one has a lot less tough miles on the clock, in the sense that, like, McCluskey has just over 20 Irish caps. Robbie has 82, broke through as an 18-year-old. And I genuinely believe that McCluskey's actually coming into the prime of his career now. So I'm really excited to see how he goes. He's had some kind of challenging days in an Irish shirt where he's come up against really good opposition. I think he's played England in Twickenham a few times, where, you know, that maybe the team didn't go as well, and that hurt him kind of long term. But I think his balance with Gary Ringrose is a nice centre partnership. And then delighted to see Tommy O'Brien on the right wing. He's been the form guy for us. Modern day winger, as I've been saying, he's really good on the repeat effort. Early, he is seriously strong. You know, his ability to get up and compete in the air is such a big part of the game now. You've got Ethan Hooker doing it on the right for South Africa. We've now got Tommy O'Brien doing it on the right for us. England have Tom Roebuck doing it. And I think for Ireland to win at the weekend, that aerial contest is going to be a huge part of it. And coupled with that, I think kick meters is going to be another one. And when you've got James Lowe's booming left foot, Osborne at the back kicks the ball really well. Gary's well able to do it. And then a halfback partnership that can mix it up both with their short kicking game and their long kicking game. I think that's an area that we're going to try and really challenge New Zealand at the weekend. But no, overall, it's a very strong team, and we've got some people to fire off the bench as well. Like that's something. This is going to be an 80-minute performance if we're gonna get a win, and keeping the likes of Conan there to come in and make a big impact. Bundy Aki, I'm sure will come on and play in the centre at some point. And, you know, depending on what's needed at halfback, you've got the likes of Craig Casey who can come on and speed things up and offer something different to Gibson Park. So, look, overall, I'm very excited by this Irish team.
Yeah, Keane?
Yeah, I think it's a long expected lines for the most part, but they did very well to keep the fact that Stuart McCloskey was going to be starting under wraps, because certainly on the ground over here, that hadn't been flagged whatsoever. You did mention, Joe, that Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw did come over carrying knocks, but I don't think those knocks were in any way affecting their selection. I think since they arrived, they've been over here since last Tuesday, so well over a week now. And last Saturday, I believe they did a really intense training session, almost like a 15-on-15 game, to try and get themselves back up to speed. And I believe Henshaw and Aki were both involved in that. And it's a form pick. I think Stuart McCloskey he's been very unlucky over the years. I think Ian makes a good point that sometimes when he's come in, the team hasn't played well, and maybe he's become a bit of a fall guy for that. But he's remarkably consistent for Ulster over the last few years. Ian, you'd obviously know that from having played alongside him as well. And it's a big opportunity for him to come in what is pretty much the biggest test of his career. I think that you could say the same for Ryan Baird. I mean, coming into this sort of international window, you've no more Peter Mahoney, obviously, and you're looking for someone to step up and take hold of that number 6 jersey. Now, Ryan Baird's form last season, I would say, along with Tommy O'Brien, who Ian has mentioned there, was exceptional. He carried that form into the summer. He played in both of the summer tour games against Portugal and Georgia. I think Paul O'Connell did a lot of work with him on that tour around the line-out. His line-out defence is excellent. I think the line-out's going to be a key area this weekend, particularly because the All Blacks are missing two of their starting second rows, Tupovoy and Patrick Tuipulotu. It sounds like Fabian Holland is going to play in the second row with Scott Barrett. If you have Simon Parker at 6, he's a decent line-out option, but I think Baird would have an edge there. So this is a big opportunity, I think, for Ryan Baird to, to say this jersey is going to be mine going forward. I don't think his form for Leinster this season has been excellent. I think he just hit such heights last season, but the old Rob Kearney adage from 2016, I think Andy Farrell probably say to him, you need a big one here from you today, because if he plays well at the weekend, Joe, I think the jersey will be his to lose going forward for the foreseeable future, at least.
Yeah, it does feel like his moment. And again, whatever about this season, because it's hard to get a read on individual form for Leinster this season when the whole thing is malfunctioning. A few exceptions, not least Tommy O'Brien would say, well, I've been doing just fine. But maybe Baird has suffered as a consequence of the overall malaise. But certainly, as you referenced, Cian, at the end of last year, he was a man possessed. Even in his interviews, there was kind of an intensity about him. And I woke up this morning and I just said, there's no way we can lose this game. He was in that kind of sweet spot. So if he can get back there, then you'd back him to make that jersey his own. Do you see Baird as, seeing as we stumbled on him, do you see him as the guy with the attributes, the guy who really should take that number 6 jersey and make it his own from now until the World Cup?
Yeah, I think he's got all the attributes. Physically really gifted. His spring and the line out, similar to what Pete would have offered, his ability to get up off the ground really quickly. And just his broad jump as an individual is really impressive. I know that from the gym scores that the Leinster guys would be sharing. When he makes a line break, he's got the speed of a back. And physically, when he imposes himself, he can be really, really effective. I think what can happen when you've got someone like Peter O'Mahony, the quality of him, who's held on to the jersey for as long as he did, you're going to end up with a queue of people coming in behind. And there is real quality there. You've got a Hearn in the Munster ranks, and then Cormac Uzuchukwu in the Ulster ranks. So while if he does perform well, he can hold on to the jersey. If he doesn't, there is a queue of people looking to take it off him. And I think with that 6th position, depending on the opposition you're playing against, is going to depend on what you go with there. Are you going to go with more of a line-out option, which Baird offers, or maybe if you're coming up against the likes of England or France, you might go with more of a power athlete like Izuchukwu, who's maybe going to have line breaks or big impact tackles in the middle of the field. But yeah, he's got the first go at it, so it is his to lose. But it's a very competitive back row because, is Doris going to sit on the bench for forevermore? I'd imagine not. So then you're going, well, could we fit him in at 6, or Conan move to 6, or how you use that back row? And the way the game has gone as well, it's very much become, right, you're the guy to be on for the first 50 or 60 minutes, and then we've got the closers coming on. So the more depth we can have, and having 5 really good, effective back rows is certainly going to be important for Ireland going forward.
Yeah. They've gone with Doris on the bench. Paul O'Connell in his press conference was just sort of kind of openly teasing it out when he was asked about whether they'd start Doris or not, and bring him on for the last 20 minutes, great, but then obviously if someone gets injured in the first minute, then you might be asking a guy to play 80. But I think with Byrne there and Henderson on the bench, they have enough flexibility in that they can move things around should an injury happen early to someone in the back row. So Doris off the bench is no small thing. And then Paddy McCarthy off the bench. Was this long rumoured, Cian? Has there been a lot of talk about this guy impressing them over there? He is 22 years of age, has 9 Leinster appearances to his name. It's a hell of a way to make your debut. Was this signposted over there? Was that the word in the ground?
We were chatting to Tig Furlong the other day. I think that's going to appear in Saturday's papers and online. And
alongside Ian Madigan's column. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
Which I did get a sneak peek of Ian Madigan's column because it's alongside a piece that I'm going to be doing as well. So I can tell the listeners and the readers that they will very much enjoy getting their eyes on it at the weekend.
He gets the knives out. Takes down a lot of people. It's an explosive. It's an explosive first column.
Yeah, he takes down himself. I think it's fair to say,
Okay.
but I won't give any spoilers away. Buy the paper, subscribe online, company man. Um, yeah, but Tyke Furlong, Joe, yeah, was very full of praise for Paddy McCarthy. Andy Farrell has just held his press conference here in Chicago as well, and obviously singing his praises. Look, like give a bit of context to Paddy McCarthy, because a lot of people might not be kind of aware of his background. Obviously, he's Joe's younger brother. He's 22 years old. When he was coming through with the Ireland under 20s a few years ago, he was outstanding, like one of the best players to come through the system in the last few years. Now, at the time, he was playing tight head, but Ireland and Leinster have since switched him across. So very similar to Andrew Porter. Andrew Porter would have played tight head for his under 20s days as well. Paddy McCarthy won a Six Nations playing tight head, but they decided to move him back across to loose head. So I think that took a bit of adjusting to as well. He played, I think it was 4 games for Leinster the season before last, and then he only played 2 games for Leinster last season. He was just completely ruined by injury. Now, in that time, I think it allowed Jack Boyle to get ahead of him in the pecking order. And I thought Jack Boyle did exceptionally well for Ireland every time he was called upon. I think back to Cardiff in the Six Nations. And I think he's very unlucky to be left out, I think, this weekend. But it's quite clear that I think the Leinster coaches and the Ireland coaches would probably see Paddy McCarthy's ceiling as being higher. He is an explosive athlete. I know it's a small enough sample size to go on, but look at the 4 games, 3 and a bit games that he's played this season. The first 3 were all against South African opposition. Obviously, the first 2 down there, he was immense against the Sharks at the Aviva. Like his scrummaging power for someone so young, still getting used to playing on the loose head side, is remarkable, really. He's very like Joe in that regard, just has a pure power and rawness. And I think that rawness is something that the coaches have really been trying to work hard on, because in his earlier days, in his 20s, you know, he'd be liable to potentially lose the head a little bit, to kind of go over the top. And we've seen that a little bit with Joe McCarthy as well, just making rash decisions. Think back to the Six Nations when he got the yellow card for pulling, was it Ramos back? A really costly yellow card at the time. But I think he's smoothed out those edges. Become far less of an issue. But Paddy has that in his game as well. But if he can harness it in the right way, we've seen some of his carries, we've seen some of his tackles, the venom and the power that he has could be a game changer for Ireland. And to have him in behind Andrew Porter, because look, if you look at Andrew Porter's minutes over the last few years, lads, like he regularly is asked to play 70 plus minutes, and that's not sustainable in a position like that. So if Paddy McCarthy, and it's very early days, the guy hasn't even played in the Champions Cup yet. It's remarkable, really. And now all of a sudden he's going to be making his debut against the All Blacks. And that small sample size, Joe, that I speak about at the start of the season makes this rise all the more remarkable, because Paddy McCarthy was one of only 3 Ireland players in the summer squad who didn't get capped in the summer and was deemed not ready to play against Georgia, to play against Portugal. Very, very different proposition to playing against the All Blacks. Now all of a sudden he's played, like I said, 3 and a bit games for Leinster. He was excellent for the 16 minutes he was on the pitch against Munster. You remember Leinster won 3 scrum penalties, and he played his role in that with Tyke Furlong. So it's a remarkable quick rise from all of a sudden in the summer not quite ready to play against tier 2 nations to now being asked to play against one of the world's best teams away from home in Chicago. But it's a brilliant story. It's a brilliant story. I'm really looking forward to whenever himself and Joe McCarthy get on the field together for Ireland, because I'd say there'll be some fireworks between them.
Oh yeah, the Bash Brothers unleashed. I guess in a parallel universe, Jack Crowley starting would be the first thing we would have talked about. But it's been so well signposted, and almost given the performance against Leinster a fait accompli. Nobody really could imagine a scenario where Farrell was going to pick Prendergast. But nonetheless, it's huge for Jack Crowley. You know, a major, fork in the road potentially for Ryan Baird. It's a fork in the road in the Crowley-Prendergast rivalry. For people who might be just coming to us for the first time this week, because rugby kind of meanders to a crescendo at the start of the season. One of the things, as well as the fitness and just the good general play that we can all see for ourselves with Crowley, one of the things maybe you've seen with that keener eye is you think he's going off script a little bit less this year as opposed to last year. He's kind of carrying out the game plan. Not that he doesn't have a maverick moment in him, but he's carrying out the game plan with a little bit maybe more discipline, something Prendergast does do. And you think that's something maybe that would appeal to Farrell as well as just the obvious good form and confidence?
Yeah, like I think, without going down the route of comparing Jack and Sam, Jack is more comfortable in an unstructured environment because he's, physically a very strong guy. He's got excellent footwork. Carrying the ball is something that he really enjoys doing. And when he's in contact, he works really hard, drives his feet, he can offload, he works hard on the ground. Um, but yeah, as you touched on there, the maverick moments that we saw kind of over the last 2 years, while they are great, sometimes when you're in international rugby, it's about doing things within the system and part of a team. What I've noticed with his performances with Munster is when he's doing a chip kick, a crossfield kick, when he's going for a break himself, the players around him know what he's doing. And that kind of synergy and cohesion that he's built and building through the training weeks and then performing at the weekend has certainly impressed me this season. I think that the key for him at the weekend, why is he being picked? He's being picked because physically he probably has an edge on Sam. He is the form guy, and you have to pick those form guys when the team is slightly undercooked. That's again has gone in McCluskey's favor, because that kind of gives the coaches an assurance. Well, Jack's going to be fired up. He's going to be ready, as opposed to someone like Dan Sheehan, where there's going to be a bit of uncertainty with 5, 6, 7 of these Irish players because they're not fully tuned up. But what Jack has to do at the weekend, he needs to try and keep the ball in front of this Irish pack, similar to what he did against Leinster, because that's what's going to be really important to get Ireland back on the front foot, play in the right areas against New Zealand, give his back three opportunities to get up and compete in the air. And then he's going to be working with Gibson Park, who should take a lot of the pressure off him and manage, whether Ireland do decide to run the ball or play the short side or kick. And I think the most important person at the weekend is probably Gibson Park because of how this game is going to be played. And Ireland really need him to find form. He had a poor game against Munster, and he'll need to really step up. And I think that the 12 days that I've had in Chicago to get that cohesion piece will have really worked in his favor as well. And we know the heights that he can reach, and it's going to be a hell of a duel between himself. I'd imagine Cam Roigard will start for New Zealand, and he's a very high quality 9. So that's going to be a great battle out there on the weekend.
Yeah. So let's turn to the game itself, and that's the Irish team. You've just referenced it, Ian, the extent to which the team is or isn't undercooked, and it makes this game really difficult to preview. I was listening to Luke Fitzgerald with Will yesterday, and I totally agreed with him. He was like, I can't believe it, like second year here, and this kind of marquee game is sort of undercut a little bit by the fact that one side is drastically undercooked compared to the other. Like it's a frustration. You want them both at their best, but it's obviously even more pronounced this year when you look at the game time. It's kind of unprecedented. Jack Conan had mentioned 2021 has been another example where Ireland went in undercooked against New Zealand and did just fine. But Will in the office was looking at the numbers and that doesn't stack up. Like Johnny Sexton of all people had played 3 URC games, for instance, in 21. And if he's playing 3, that shows you what most others were playing. Whereas it's next to nothing now. So, Cian, it sort of comes down to, in Andy we trust, and like to what extent those 2 big training sessions and the muscle memory that this very experienced team have can kind of get them ready for what New Zealand will throw at them. New Zealand haven't played in 4 weeks, but they've had 9 games together this year. They're absolutely kind of a cohesive, road-tested unit. And I don't know the answer. If everyone give your predictions. I'm like, how do we have a clue how this Ireland team are going to pitch up? It's almost unanswerable in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's the long and short of it. We don't know how they'll pitch up. I mean, if you wanted to look at it the other way, the All Blacks have played all those games. They've been a bit patchy. I know they finished second in the Rugby Championship, but they're in a sort of a strange position in terms of Scott Robertson being under a fair bit of pressure, I would say. And we spent a bit of time in their camp earlier this week. But I think, yeah, Andy Farrell is putting a lot of stock in the fact that, like we should say, this season has been obviously so different because the Lions went on so late into August, and what was it, 16 Ireland players coming back. But I look at how Tyke Byrne, Joe, played at Croke Park, and like he wasn't just the best player on the pitch, but like that was one of the best Tyke Byrne performances in a long list of exceptional performances. So we know that Andy Farrell has this, no excuses mentality, and I think in a way he'll be glad that the Leinster players, like Ian touched on, Jamieson Gibson Park, like he's not going to play as poorly as he played against Leinster again. Like that was such a rare off day. But the fact that so many of those Leinster players who came back struggled to get up to the pitch, I think he will look at as a good thing, because now they know that if they turned up at Soldier Field on Saturday and play like that, they'll get beaten out the gate. And I think it's worth remembering as well that against the Sharks, and I know the Sharks were really poor, but Leinster brought back 5 Lions that day: Ronan Kelleher, James Lowe, Jamie Osborne, Tyke Furlong, and they were all excellent that day. Again, I know it was only against the Sharks, so I would have less of a concern, I have to admit, about Ireland being drastically undercooked. I completely understand the logic, and I saw Will had done the numbers, and like it makes a lot of sense. But the reason Andy Farrell came over so early was to have a mini preseason of sorts. Like I said, to have that big training session on Saturday. Certainly, having spent time with Paul O'Connell on Tuesday, we got to chat to Jack Crowley. They seem super confident in what they're doing. Like they've been all business as usual in terms of, staying within camp. The All Blacks are doing a crazy amount of commercial things to try and build the brand of the All Blacks, whereas Ireland, and they did that a lot in 2016 as well, which kind of came back to haunt them in terms of taking their eye off the ball, whereas Ireland are here knowing the task that's at hand, and I would have less concerns, I have to admit, about them being drastically undercooked.
Okay, very interesting. As an aside, by the way, this All Blacks building the brand business in America is just the most nonsensical guff. Like what they think, like going to a coffee shop or hanging out at the Adidas shop for a couple of hours is going to do, is beyond me. You know what I mean? And I saw the New Zealand Herald talking about like, the All Blacks are saving rugby in America. They've sold out Social Field. Yeah, it's like going to be 6-1 Irish. Like, I don't know, like what they're talking about or what they think this is going to do. But anyway, if they're flogging their players, good luck to them. Yeah.
Just on that, we were talking to Simon Parker, who, like I mentioned, sounds like he's going to be starting 6 at the weekend. And he was asked like a question like that about getting out, and no word of a lie, he said, and I quote, "We're here to make our sponsors proud and our supporters," but he put the sponsors before the fans. And I just thought, come on.
Yeah.
And of all the players, the Ireland players we spoke to this week, I can guarantee you that none of them were saying that we want to make our sponsors proud. So there's definitely 2 different types of trains of thought here. The All Blacks are on a business kind of trip as well as the match itself. So maybe that will come back to haunt them as well, because like I said, they did that in 2016 and they took their eye off the ball and paid a price for it.
Yeah. Anyway, the undercooked point, Ian, and as part of it, like, in your experience, the extent to which 2 really kind of borderline full contact sessions can get you up to speed?
They'll definitely help. And I think ultimately what Andy Farrell has made the decision there that the Irish team is going to get more out of those sessions than, for example, playing another U or C game.
Yeah.
The chat out of the New Zealand camp is like, our structures are in place, defensive, attacking, set piece. We just need to tweak things, and that's what you'd expect at this stage of the season. They've played 9 games, and they've had a pretty good season. Like, played 9, won 7, albeit France sent over kind of their second stringers during the summer, but it's still a very good. They've such a deep squad and so many quality players coming out of the top 14 that they still challenged New Zealand in those games. 2 disappointing fixtures. They lost to Argentina for the first time in New Zealand, and then it was the second half in the game against Wellington after beating South Africa in Eden Park the week before. That it was like a draw game or close to it at half time, and then South Africa came out second half and really turned the screw and blew New Zealand apart. The game finished 40 odd points to 10, and they lost the aerial battle, they lost the battle at set piece, physically were dominated, and that left a deep scar. And then full credit to New Zealand, they bounced back and against a kind of reinvigorated Australian side, beat them reasonably comprehensively in the final 2 games of the Rugby Championship. But the chat is, we just need to make tweaks that's not what Ireland are saying. This is the first time they've really been together since the Six Nations, and before that with Andy Farrell. The concern about being undercooked, it's a hard metric to measure. But if you look at this game last year, where we really came undone, the line out was something that didn't go to plan. And then the big one for me is the ruck. So if you're worried about what line you're running, whether you should be passing or kicking, or are you supposed to be in this ruck, or where are you going on the next phase, that's can bring in a split second, or it can just affect your instincts. And that's the difference between getting to a breakdown before a poacher coming in, or being a fraction late and the poacher turning the ball over. So the breakdown is going to be a huge part of the game at the weekend. Do I think Ireland can win? Yes, I do. But there's a few key areas that we'll need to get on top of. We've spoken about the aerial contest. We've spoken about kick meters. Just reference the breakdown there. Dominant tackles is a huge one. And like, we've got forwards there that can make them. You know, Sheehan, Furlong, Van der Fleer, Conan, Baird. What a dominant tackle gives you against New Zealand, you're obviously driving the players back. The referee is only really concerned about what the attacking team are doing at that breakdown. And if you just pile bodies in, quite often you'll win a penalty, or you'll get a turnover, and then you're attacking against an unstructured team. And then, as Cian mentioned, the line out. Look, there are five big areas, but if we can get on top in those areas, I fully believe that we can win at the weekend. But doing that with very little rugby behind us is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah. And I dare say it's a complicated answer, which depends on dominant tackles and speed of ruck ball in particular, and any other number of factors. But I suppose, like, if you were to just take a layman's view of Ireland post World Cup 2023, it's that there was this unbelievable kind of like a rhythm to Ireland's attack 2022 into 23. Like, it just was phenomenal to watch, and it was flowing. And post 23, like the 24 Six Nations they won, like they went to South Africa and plucked a drawn series out of the fire with Frawley's kick and everything. But certainly from last November, because my memory of the All Blacks game is not the ruck. It's all these like handling errors, Crowley handling errors everywhere. It was like messy into the Six Nations. It just doesn't feel like they've got anywhere near that 22-23 flow in attack. And that's what I'm fascinated to see. If can they get that back? Is that just kind of a moment in time, and it's Sexton related and it's kind of gone, or can Farrell they can almost re-find it somehow? I don't know what your sense is of that, Ian.
Yeah, I don't think that their goal will be to get that back. I think the game has moved on from that. I don't think Ireland want to go back to playing 30, 40, 50 phases that we were seeing at that World Cup, and it was beautiful to watch and it was fluid. For me, the way this Ireland team are going to be successful is they need to be the best kicking team in the world. They need to be the best team in the air in the world, which I think we can be. And then I think our defense needs to be more aggressive. I've said it before, but we need to go with this high press defense that Leinster have employed over the last kind of 2 seasons with Jacks. That we suffocate teams. I think if we, while it'd be nice to see Ireland being fluid when they do attack, it's going to be capped at a certain number of phases, because if you go into the 15, 25, 35 phases, you're killing yourself if you turn that ball over, and then the opposition can either catch you when you're really tired or gain significant kick meters. So I don't think we're going to go back to that.
Right. And also the rules changed, didn't they, around the breakdown? It's harder to keep possession a little bit.
Much harder. It's easier to turn the ball over now. That's and the aerial contest. Like, I was rewatching some of the game against, I think it was South Africa, and it was just comical seeing teams literally building a wall in front of the catcher in the backfield. Like, there was no contest at all. Whereas that's become such a big part of the game, because if you can win an oncoming kick, you're attacking against a backfield that's not set. You're attacking against a frontline defense that's retreating. That you've got second rows and props mixed in with backs. It's the best way to, it's the best platform to attack off now, is catching an oncoming kick. So yeah, I don't think the focus is going to be, but I think we will definitely see Ireland evolve their attack when they do get those oncoming kicks. How well can backs and forwards link up together. And it was interesting hearing, I think it was Will was talking to Hugo Keenan, and he was saying about how they opened up the playbook in the Lions, and
Yeah.
the challenge for Ireland is to keep evolving. And how will they do that? Well, I think that the quality of the ball players we have in our forward pack is that we can integrate backs and forwards really effectively in the middle of the field,
Yeah.
and create that kind of indecision in defenders.
So still have that kind of that craft, and maybe just bust teams open earlier as opposed to going through lots of phases. Because I take your point, being the best kicking team, and it's moved towards more of an aerial space. And obviously Ireland are good in the air, but that sounds like kind of a more attritional place that the game is in, maybe. And like, it sort of felt that Ireland almost reached a point in the last couple of years where they thought, well, we can't smash teams. We have to beat them with kind of craft and our general play. So I just wonder if we say, no, we're going to go out and we're kicking team, an aerial team, and we don't want to lose that craft either. I feel like, I know other countries hated when we talked about ourselves as being a smart rugby nation, and I understood why. But like, I'm not sure we can just go out and like, we're just going to bomb the ball and smash into teams, and that's how we'll get over the line now.
I think it's got to do with a patience thing of knowing when the right time to play is, and then knowing, right, we've kind of had our go here. We've gone 5, 6, 7 phases.
Yeah.
And tied in with a kicking game is having a really effective running game where you can get the ball to width, stretch a team in the wide channels, stretch their backfield cover, and then you put in a really effective kick where you've got all of your players on their feet, ready to make a really good kick chase, and in essence try and flip the field. You go from playing around your own 10-meter line to then forcing a team to exit from their own 22.
Yeah.
So you can't just thinking that we're going to be a kicking team and not have a running game.
Yeah.
Ireland have a very good running game, but they need to be able to mix the two, and not exhaust themselves, because we did that in the World Cup. We did exhaust ourselves.
Okay, that's really interesting. Cian, if I could, just because you're closer to the New Zealand camp, I mean, that's fascinating, that line about we want to make our sponsors happy. I'd like to see privately what the players are saying. Do you know what I mean? They've got to be rolling their eyes. But also, Leon McDonald left the coaching ticket last year, and then Jason Holland will leave at the end of this tour. Now, there was a very kind of genial press conference where it was announced. It wasn't like acrimony and like there's kind of issues behind the scenes, but equally it's kind of noteworthy that some of these guys are walking away from what is the most prestigious gig in New Zealand rugby. What's kind of the talk around where they are in that sense, and Scott Robertson generally?
Yeah, we actually bumped into Jason Holland at the team hotel the other day. He came over chatting. Obviously, former Munster player, Munster supporters will remember him. He was a brilliant player over the years for them. But yeah, they're definitely putting on a brave face, I would say, publicly, Joe. But any coach who's coaching in New Zealand, like, the dream is obviously to be in the All Black setup. And when two coaches of the caliber of Leon MacDonald last year and Jason Holland now leave, like, it doesn't really add up. The word is that Scott Robertson, as obviously came through the Crusaders, had huge success with the Crusaders, that he's trying to make the sort of the coaching staff as Crusaders heavy, for want of a better term, as possible. Really wants to lean on what he's doing. Obviously, Jason Holland would have come from the Hurricanes, so maybe they just didn't align in terms of their ideas. Now, they haven't said that publicly. That's me just kind of reading between the lines. But like, I know people are fed up of hearing about World Cup cycles, but Ireland have started talking about it already, that this November window is when you really start pivoting towards the 27 World Cup. So effectively, for New Zealand to lose a coach, like, it's still 2 years out. There's plenty of time for them to get a replacement in, but it's certainly not ideal. And I think it adds to the uncertainty around this All Blacks team and coaching staff. I think it's fair to say, Scott Robertson, like, when he took over as head coach, he was the darling of New Zealand rugby. Like I said, he won all the Super Rugby titles. Was it 5 or 6 in a row? I can't remember exactly, with the Crusaders. His breakdancing after the match, really likable guy. So he was roundly the the most popular choice to take over from Ian Foster, and there was plenty of calls when Ireland had won the series in 22 for Scott Robertson to come in beforehand, but the players wanted to stick with Foster, which they did. But I think it's fair to say Robertson has found this step up tricky. I think there's a lot of people in New Zealand are wondering if he is actually the right man for the job. He'd be a very different type of profile to your Steve Hansen, your Hansen, like I said, and Ian Foster. Sorry, they're more of kind of, sticklers, where Razor, as he's called, is like a surfer. He's kind of a bit more laid back. But that loss that Ian referred to against the Springboks, I mean, that caused serious damage in New Zealand. Like, if New Zealand lose at all, as we all know, there's nearly, the whole thing gets ripped up and started again. But it was that manner of the defeat. Now, I also think he's not helped by, and this is why, Joe, you asked about being undercooked and all that. This is not a vintage All Blacks team. They have 3, 4, 5 exceptional players like Will Jordan, Geordie Barrett, Bowden Barrett, Artie Surveyor, like guys who would walk into a World 15. But I think when you go through their 23, this isn't the fearful team of like a Dan Carter, Kieran Reid, Richie McCaw days at all. I think you look in the back row in particular, like Simon Parker, I don't think would get near a great All Black team. I know he's only broken onto the scene, but he's a 25-year-old who's been knocking around Super Rugby for many years. Like I said, the second rows, they're short there. In the back three, Will Jordan sounds like he'll be at fullback. Caleb Clark might come in. Rico Ioane has obviously had his struggles as well. So it helps when you've beaten them, what is it, Joe, 5 times since 2016 from an Irish point of view. But the invincibility around the All Blacks is not the same as it was. And certainly, I think when you look at their team sheet, I don't think there's anything to fear as well. So I think that plays into the uncertainty around the All Blacks, as well as the coaching staff in terms of the changes that are going on and the pressure that Scott Robertson is under from the Kiwis back home. Because all you need to do is have a flick through the New Zealand Herald or any of the other New Zealand websites to see that the knives are being sharpened. They're not quite out, but they're being sharpened. And if they were to lose this weekend, it could be seriously damaging for him.
Right. I hadn't actually realised that. Because, I just sort of thought, well, 9 games, 1-7. Hey, you lose to South Africa. It can happen. That is interesting. Ian, do you want to pick up on that point? It's a simple question, but like, how good is this New Zealand team? You look at the players, the personnel. How highly do you rate them? Where do they fit into the world order at the moment and New Zealand teams that Ireland would have faced over the last decade?
Yeah, like they do have genuine world-class talent still. We saw how effective Barrett was when he was with Leinster, arguably Leinster's best player for the time that he was here.
Yeah, I'd say, like a lot of people, I'm like, oh, he's really good. I just had completely underestimated how great this guy was. It's amazing seeing him out of context.
Yeah. They don't quite have like the strength through the spine of the team that they have. The Barrett brothers are a really important part of the team. Who they go with out half is an interesting point. They've chopped and changed between Barrett and his name slipped me.
Damien McKenzie,
and then who's the out half that's in Japan?
Richie Moanga, and he's coming back because it hasn't worked at all. So he's going to make a big difference when he comes back.
Yeah. So arguably, Joe, the best out half has been playing in Japan in Richie Moanga, and that has created a bit of a rift because it's been public about trying to get him back, and then that questions the guys that are there, and that goes against the kind of fabric of New Zealand. They're very passionate about people playing in New Zealand and obviously playing for the national team, similar to the setup that we have. It's an interesting one. They've never fully got behind Robertson, even though the chat was before the last World Cup, could he come in before the World Cup? And they do really kind of pile the pressure on their coaches. Joe Schmidt is obviously the obvious one that you'd think, will he get it at some stage? I'd love to see it happen, but I think they'll stick with Robertson for this World Cup cycle. The performance, while the South Africa one was the one that was disappointing. Look, if we racked up a big number at the weekend, I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be a really, really tight game. I think New Zealand will probably win maybe 3 out of the 4. I don't think they'll do the slam on this tour. I hope they don't against us anyway. But yeah, they don't quite have the quality. Like there was even watching the rugby championship, there was mistakes that they were making that in previous years, if players had made those mistakes, you wouldn't see them again.
Right.
Um, One in particular, I think it was like the sub second row came on. He gets his role wrong in and around the ruck, which is just something that you don't associate with New Zealand. And then he gets picked again the following week and makes a very similar mistake. He's caught ball watching. The fluidity of their passing, like thinking back to like 2013, like they just didn't make mistakes. They were really difficult to play against because they were doing things at such high speed. Their catch pass, their basics were at such a high level. Not that their attention to detail isn't where it should be. Maybe they just don't quite have the quality of players that they did have because it was a generational team. Like the dominance that they had for that kind of, it was probably about 8 years that they really dominated world rugby. Whereas now, in my opinion, you've got like South Africa and France are numbers 1 and 2 in no particular order. Maybe South Africa just pipping it, and then like coming in behind that, I would have, again, in no particular order, Ireland, New Zealand, and England. And then close behind that, probably Australia. And that's where like this autumn international window is really important because it affects the seeding for the World Cup. And the difference between being in that top four and outside that top four is potentially what's going to be the difference for, especially for Ireland, making it past that quarter final. And then the other side to it as well is the format has changed for the World Cup. It's now it's group stages and then into top 16. So if you ended up coming fifth, for example, or sixth in the seedings, you could come up against a good side in that final 16. And as we saw in the previous World Cup, we played our best side every game. And you can't do that now with the new format. You've got to be able to rotate your squad. But if you came up against the likes of Fiji in the last 16,
Yeah.
very difficult to rotate guys. So these 4 games are really important for Ireland to get, certainly guarantee in the top 4, but every spot is going to help. So it's not like these are just international friendlies. They're for getting as high up the seedings as possible.
That's a great point. Okay, fellas, final thoughts each. Cian, you can work in a prediction here. Saturday.
I'm looking forward to seeing how Tommy O'Brien goes. Ian touched on sort of, Ireland becoming a kicking team and the aerial game, but we know what Andy Farrell likes from his wingers, and he used that phrase a couple of years ago, which Mac Hansen personifies in terms of being an untidy winger. Tommy O'Brien isn't really that untidy winger. He's more of a speedster, which Ireland have been lacking in the last few years. So I'm fascinated to see the dynamic there in terms of playing to Tommy O'Brien's strengths and maybe him slightly developing his game to become that more of a playmaker, but keeping the pace out wide. Because if Ireland can put him into open space. Look, Mac Hansen is a brilliant player, but he's a very different type of profile. Ireland haven't had this kind of gas on the wing for quite a while, really. So I'm really excited to see how he goes. He's 27 years old. A lot of people think he's only 21, 22 because he's had such bad injuries over the last few years. So this has been a long time coming for Tommy O'Brien. Exceptional for Leinster last year. Very good for Ireland on the summer tour for whatever is worth. So I'm fascinated to see how he goes. I think in terms of prediction, Joe, I think the All Blacks are justifiably favourites, absolutely. But I go back to my earlier point about I would have concerns about them, Ireland being potentially undercooked, but not maybe as many as other people have. I think like I said, their aura of invincibility is gone. Ireland have beaten them here already in 2016. They were terrible against them this time last year. They lost an epic game in the 23 World Cup quarter-final. So they kind of owe them one now, having lost the last 2 in a row. But all that said, I'd still fancy the All Blacks probably to nick it, maybe by 5 points. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ireland were to cause an upset. I would have faith and confidence in Andy Farrell having them up to speed. They've been over here early. They've done all their training and certainly haven't been in around the camp. There's a confidence and not an arrogance in any way at all, but certainly the players don't seem like that they're worried about coming into this game and sort of, the All Blacks lying in wait in the long grass.
So is it just you just think New Zealand are just marginally better?
Yeah, they're coming off the back of the rugby championship and having that tour against France, albeit against a second string France team, counts for a lot. Like Andy Farrell hasn't worked with Ireland since last November.
Yeah.
Now I think that's less of an issue. I was chatting to Dan Sheehan about this a couple of weeks ago, and it was funny during an interview. And it was funny, and he said, "You know what? I haven't even thought about that because his voice is so still fresh in my mind from the Lions tour that I don't think the players are viewing that at all because so many of them were away on the Lions tour. So I think that will be less of an issue as well. I think the attacking game, because let's remember Andy Farrell is the one who coaches Ireland's attack. I think their attacking game should be better with him back. Johnny Sexton is now in the full-time coaching staff. I would imagine he'll start having more of a say, certainly around the area of the game that Ian's talked about and laid out so brilliantly, because I think the numbers would back up what you were saying, Ian, and the stats in terms of the best teams kick the ball most often. You look at South Africa and you look at France. Everyone has this notion of France being a jouet, but they kick the ball a hell of a lot. So all that said, Joe, yeah, I just think the All Blacks being that slightly more battle hardened, probably justifiable favourites in my mind, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ireland turned them over.
Okay. And what are you going to go and see tonight? What are you doing? Make us jealous.
I must check the entertainment schedule. Yeah, last night we went to a blues club, a famous blues club called Buddy Guys. I think any listeners who are into their blues might have heard of. Apparently, it's a mecca for blues. That was pretty cool. No more live sport until the game on Saturday. Might check out some of the World Series. Honestly, the buzz here for the baseball, and the Cubs aren't even playing, is crazy, and it's kind of nice to just immerse yourself in that. I don't have a clue what's going on in baseball. Half the time. That's why I enjoyed the ice hockey so much the other night, because at least I could follow that. But it's just a privilege, like Joe, to be here in a city like this. And I know before coming over, you're kind of reading stories about all sorts going on in Chicago at the moment, but the people here are unbelievably friendly and welcoming as well. You know, America is in such a strange place, but certainly haven't had that experience here so far this week. It's been brilliant.
Nice. Mads, final word?
I think Ireland go 3 out of 4 wins in this window. So if we lose this one, I think we'll go 3 from 3 after it. If we win this one, maybe we go 4 from 4. Maybe South Africa trip us up in the final one. We can win this game, but as Cian has expertly explained there, we are up against it for where this fixture has landed. So yeah, I'd echo what he said. If we can get those the 5 areas I mentioned, if we can get an edge in those, I think we'll win. But we're going to be up against it to do that.
Yeah. Again, that point I made right at the start, it is a pity this fixture isn't like 2 matches into the schedule or something when both sides can throw their best shot. That is a frustration. Like if this was week 3 in Dublin, I appreciate you haven't seen how Ireland have played in week 1 and 2, so it's hard. But you take my point. If this was week 3 in Dublin, would you feel a lot more confident about Ireland?
I would, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. I did. Just getting up to speed. Yeah. Okay. More training sessions. Yeah. Sorry, Cian.
No.
Can I mention one more thing, Joe, before we go? I think it's definitely worth giving Barry Murphy a shout out.
Once it's not something you're going to do tonight, you can mention it. Yeah.
No one wants to hear that. But I'm looking forward to seeing Barry Murphy, the ex-Ireland and Munster centre, is going to be singing Ireland's Call here on Saturday, and all going well, he's going to be singing Our Own Navian and Ireland's Call for the 3 home games. I did a piece with him earlier this week, if anyone wants to check it out, but an amazing honour for... He's a really popular guy. Obviously, you know him as well, I'd assume, Mads. But what an honour. He didn't actually get to ever sing Our Own Navian in the 4 caps he won as an Ireland player because they were all away from home. So he's going to have the honour of singing Soldier Field here on Saturday and then for the 3 home games. And that's a really cool story. I can't think of there's too many former Ireland internationals who have sang the anthems. I don't know, would you fancy it, Mads?
I wouldn't, but I'm looking forward to hearing him. He's a brilliant musician. He's a great pundit as well. Actually, I really enjoy his content.
I read that piece, Cian, and I was struck by the line that and if everything goes well in Chicago, if it goes well, then I'll get to do the 3 home ones. What's this? We'll sign you up for 1 rolling contract business. What are they assuming is going to go wrong?
No, I think he's just being humble there. He's signed up to do it, but he's worried that, in his own words, that he doesn't F it up this weekend. He mentioned your man, the 10-year-old Stephen Mulrooney, who sang Ireland's call, was it last year, and Andy Farrell up in the press box being revved up. So as he said himself, Joe, a 10-year-old has set the standards. He's got a lot to live up to, but it's a brilliant honour, really cool for him.
No, it is cool. It is cool. Okay, so we have 2 New Zealands just, and we will reconvene next week. Cian, enjoy the game. I see a little bit of light rain scheduled, so we'll see, but it's going to be an amazing occasion. And Ian Madigan, listen, don't mess it up. That's the like. Anything weird you say will be just clipped up and a meme forever. But like, enjoy yourself and all that.
Thanks a million.
No. Honestly, you're gonna do so well. I think even people would have heard you on Munster Leinster, like so good. So enjoy it. It's kind of a cool thing to commentate on. Hopefully, it's a famous win. Okay, we're done. Mads, Cian, thanks, fellas.